In the darkest corners of space, where civilizations measure courage by the distance they maintain from danger, there exists a species that runs toward the screaming. They call themselves humans, and they have a peculiar habit of adopting the unwanted, protecting the helpless, and standing between monsters and innocents, even when those innocents belong to species that once tried to exterminate them. When the Zephyrian rescue beacon pierced through the cosmic void, every rational species in the sector calculated the odds and turned away. The signal came from the Forbidden Zone, where the apex predator of known space, the Void Stalker, had claimed territory among the asteroid fields. No ship that entered ever returned. No crew that faced the beast ever lived to tell the tale. But Lieutenant Commander Marcus Chun of the human vessel Defiance wasn't known for making rational decisions. As the lone human representative in a galaxy that still questioned whether his species deserved a seat among the civilized worlds, Marcus had spent 3 years proving that sometimes the most dangerous choice is also the most necessary one. The Zephyrian cubs were dying. Their life pods were failing. The beast was hunting, and one human was about to remind the galaxy why his species had earned their reputation as the universe's most stubborn protectors, even when protection meant facing a creature that could tear apart a battleship with its bare claws and had never known defeat. Sometimes the only thing standing between extinction and survival is someone crazy enough to believe that impossible odds are just another kind of invitation. The emergency beacon cut through the silence of the Defiance's bridge like a knife through flesh. Lieutenant Commander Marcus Chun straightened in his captain's chair, his dark eyes fixed on the holographic display that materialized before him. The red distress signal pulsed with desperate urgency, its automated message playing on repeat in the universal trade language. Zephyrian civilian transport, Golden Wing, requesting immediate assistance. Life support failing. Children aboard. Position: asteroid field designation Tango 77. Please respond. Please help us. The bridge fell silent except for the soft hum of the ship's systems. Chen's mixed crew, 3 humans, 2 Altarians, and 1 Corvani engineer, stared at the display with varying degrees of concern and calculation. It was Chief Navigator Yaira, one of the Altarians, who spoke first, her crystalline voice carrying the weight of cold logic that her species was known for. Commander, Tango 77 is in the restricted zone, the Void Stalker's territory. Her 4 arms gestured at the star charts with precise movements. No vessel has survived contact with that creature in over 2 standard years. The probability of successful rescue is less than 0.03%. Chun rubbed his jaw, feeling the day's stubble rough against his palm. The Void Stalker. Even the name was enough to make veteran spacers change course and find alternative routes. The creature was a legend of terror, a bioengineered nightmare from some long-dead civilization that had thought itself clever enough to create the perfect weapon. 30 meters long, armored in natural plating that could deflect military-grade plasma bolts, and possessed of an intelligence that bordered on the supernatural. It had claimed the asteroid field as its hunting ground, and nothing that entered ever left alive. How many children? Chen asked quietly. His communications officer, Ensign Rodriguez, checked her instruments. The manifest shows 12 Zephyrian cubs, ages ranging from 5 to 15 in their developmental cycle. The transport was carrying them to the medical station on Kepler Prime for treatment of Crimson Lung Syndrome. Chen's expression hardened. He knew about Crimson Lung, a degenerative condition that affected young Zephyrians, gradually destroying their respiratory systems unless treated with specialized equipment available only at major medical facilities. Without treatment, those children would die within days. With their life support failing, they might not even have hours. Commander, Lieutenant Voss, his tactical officer, spoke up. The pale human's voice carried the careful neutrality of someone who had learned not to question his commanding officer's decisions too directly. The Galactic Council has classified this sector as a no-fly zone. We could face court-martial for entering without authorization. The Galactic Council, Chun said slowly, can kiss my exhaust trail. Dr. Kethera, the Corvani engineer whose feathers were currently a deep blue indicating worry, clicked her beak nervously. Marcus, my friend, I understand your desire to help, but this creature, people have legends about it. We call it the Death Mori, the silent death. It does not simply kill, it hunts for sport. It toys with its prey. Chun stood up, his compact frame moving with the controlled energy of someone who had spent years in both military service and exploration. At 5'9", he wasn't particularly imposing by human standards, but his crew had learned that his size meant nothing when his resolve was engaged. His short-cropped black hair and weathered features spoke of a man who had seen combat, and his steady brown eyes held the kind of determination that could be both reassuring and terrifying. Doctor, how long do those cubs have on current life support? The Corvani's feathers shifted to a darker shade as she consulted her medical sensors. Based on the beacon's telemetry, perhaps 6 hours. 8 at the absolute maximum. And how long would it take the nearest Galactic Council rescue vessel to reach them? Silence stretched across the bridge. Everyone knew the answer. The Council's forces were spread thin, and they had written off anything in the restricted zones as acceptable losses. By the time bureaucracy finished processing the request for a rescue mission, those children would be dead. Set course for Tango 77, Chun ordered. Sir, Yaira began, but Chun cut her off with a raised hand. I'm not asking for a debate, Navigator. I'm giving you a direct order. Set the course. The Altarian's crystalline features remained impassive, but her compliance was immediate. Course laid in, Commander. Transit time at maximum safe speed, 47 minutes. Make it 30. Sir, the asteroid field's density makes high-speed navigation extremely. Make it 30, Yaira. Those kids don't have time for safe. As the Defiance altered course and began accelerating toward what every rational being in the galaxy considered certain death, Chin moved to his personal workstation and began pulling up everything the ship's database contained about the Void Stalker. The files were a mixture of official reports, survivor testimonies, and sensor data from the handful of automated probes that had managed to transmit information before being destroyed. The creature was massive, that much was certain. Sensor readings suggested a length of approximately 30 meters, with a wingspan that could reach 45 meters when fully extended. Its body appeared to be naturally armored with a chitinous exoskeleton that had evolved or been designed to absorb and dissipate energy weapons fire. Physical projectiles could penetrate its hide, but the creature's speed and agility made targeting extremely difficult. What made the Void Stalker truly terrifying, however, wasn't just its physical capabilities. The creature demonstrated tactical intelligence that suggested either high-level sapience or incredibly sophisticated programming. It had been observed herding prey into kill zones, using the asteroid field's natural formations to set ambushes, and even employing psychological warfare by allowing some victims to escape initially, only to hunt them down slowly over the course of hours or days. The few survivors who had encountered the beast and lived to tell about it, most of them having been part of large fleet actions where they could escape while the creature was occupied with other targets, described something that defied the natural order. The Void Stalker could survive in the vacuum of space, maneuvering through zero gravity with impossible grace. It seemed to feed on the life force of its victims rather than their physical bodies, though its claws and teeth were more than capable of rending hull plating and bone with equal ease. Commander, Rodriguez called out, breaking Chen's concentration. I'm receiving additional telemetry from the Golden Wing. Their fusion reactor is developing microfractures. They're venting atmosphere from multiple hull breaches. Chen's jaw tightened. Time to critical failure? 4 hours, possibly less. The situation was deteriorating faster than expected. Not only were the Cubs facing death from life support failure, but the transport itself was breaking apart. Even if they could somehow deal with the Void Stalker, they might arrive to find nothing but debris. Can we boost our speed? Chen asked. Yaira's response came with the careful precision her species was known for. Negative, Commander. We are already exceeding recommended velocity for asteroid field navigation by 37%. Further acceleration would result in impact probability rising to unacceptable levels. Dr. Kithera looked up from her engineering console, her feathers now displaying the rapid color shifts that indicated high stress. Marcus, perhaps we should contact the Zephyrian government. They might be willing to authorize a military rescue mission. Chen shook his head. The Zephyrians don't have any military assets in this sector. Their nearest battle group is 6 days away. He paused, studying the tactical display. Besides, they'd never risk their ships against the Stalker. They don't think like we do. It was true, and everyone on the bridge knew it. The various species that made up the Galactic Council had different approaches to risk assessment and acceptable losses. Most alien cultures had evolved from prey species or had developed along paths that emphasized survival through caution and group preservation. The idea of risking the many for the few was alien to them. Not wrong, necessarily, but incomprehensible. Humans, on the other hand, had evolved from persistence hunters and social pack animals. They had an instinctive drive to protect the young and vulnerable, even when those young belonged to other species. It had made them both valuable allies and dangerous wildcards in galactic politics. Entering asteroid field perimeter, Yaira announced. Passive sensors are detecting debris from at least 17 different vessels. Some of it appears to be recent. The main view screen shifted to show the outer edge of Tango 77, a chaotic maze of rocky bodies ranging in size from pebbles to small moons. The asteroids moved in irregular patterns, influenced by the gravitational effects of 3 nearby gas giants and the unpredictable solar wind for the system's variable star. It was the kind of environment that challenged even the most advanced navigation systems, and the evidence of previous disasters was sobering. Any sign of the Golden Wing? Chen asked. Negative, Rodriguez replied. The asteroid field's mineral composition is interfering with long-range sensors. We'll need to get closer to establish contact. And any sign of our friend? Nothing on passive sensors, but Rodriguez hesitated. Commander, this entire field is a sensor nightmare. The creature could be anywhere. We might not detect it until it's right on top of us. Chen nodded grimly. That was exactly what made the Void Stalker such an effective predator. The asteroid field wasn't just its territory. It was perfectly suited to its hunting style. The creature could use the floating rocks for cover, concealment, and as weapons if necessary. Meanwhile, potential prey would be flying essentially blind, their sensors confused by the electromagnetic interference and gravitational anomalies. Take us in, Chun ordered, dead slow and ready for anything. The Defiance moved deeper into the asteroid field, its hull occasionally scraping against smaller rocks despite Yaira's skillful navigation. The ship's lights cut through the darkness, illuminating the ancient stone and metal that drifted through the void. Some of the larger asteroids showed signs of excavation. Whether natural or artificial was impossible to determine. Commander, Voss called out from the tactical station. I'm reading unusual energy patterns from asteroid cluster 77 Alpha. Could be artificial. On screen, the view screen focused on a grouping of mid-sized asteroids that had apparently been caught in each other's gravitational fields, creating a relatively stable formation. Among the natural rocks, Chun could make out the unmistakable lines of a spacecraft hull. It was the Golden Wing, and it was in worse condition than the telemetry had suggested. The transport ship was wedged between 2 asteroids, its hull split open in multiple places. Emergency lights flickered weakly along its length, and Chun could see the bright sparks of escaping atmosphere forming small ice crystals in the vacuum. The ship was dying, and everyone aboard was running out of time. Can you get us close enough for a rescue operation? Chen asked. Yaira studied her navigation display carefully. The formation is unstable. The gravitational stresses are causing the asteroids to shift position slowly. If we approach too closely, we risk being crushed. How close can we get? Perhaps 500 meters. Close enough for emergency transport, but we would need to work quickly. Chen was about to respond when Rodriguez suddenly stiffened at her station. Commander, I'm detecting movement. Something large, approximately 3 kilometers to starboard. The bridge fell silent except for the soft beeping of his sensors. Chun felt his heart rate increase as he studied the tactical display. There was something there, something that seemed to be drifting with the asteroids, but moving with too much purpose to be natural debris. Can you get a clear reading? Negative, sir. Whatever it is, it's staying in the sensor shadows. Rodriguez's voice was tight with tension. But based on the gravitational displacement patterns, it's big. Very big. Chen knew what they were seeing without needing confirmation. The Void Stalker had found them, and it was already beginning its hunt. The creature was using the asteroid field's natural interference to mask its approach, probably observing them to determine their capabilities and weaknesses before striking. All stations, battle alert, Chen ordered quietly. But keep the weapon's power down. I don't want to provoke it until we have those cubs safely aboard. As the Defiance crept closer to the trapped transport, Chen couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched by something ancient and hungry. The Void Stalker wasn't just a predator, it was a patient one. It would wait for the perfect moment to strike, when its prey was most vulnerable and least able to defend itself. The rescue operation was about to begin, but Chen suspected that saving the Zephyrian cubs would be the easy part. The real challenge would be getting everyone out alive once the beast decided to reveal itself. In the darkness between the asteroids, something stirred with deadly intent, and the hunt was about to begin in earnest. The Defiance settled into position 500 meters from the crippled Golden Wing, its maneuvering thrusters firing in controlled bursts to maintain station keeping against the chaotic gravitational forces of the asteroid cluster. Through the main view screen, the extent of the transport's damage became horrifyingly clear. The ship's elegant curves, typical of Zephyrian design, were marred by jagged tears in the hull plating where debris impacts had punched through. Atmosphere continued to leak from multiple breaches, forming deadly, beautiful ice crystals that caught and reflected the emergency lighting. Rodriguez, can you establish communication with the transport? Chen asked, his eyes never leaving the wounded vessel. Working on it, sir. Their primary communications array appears to be damaged, but I'm detecting weak signals from their emergency beacon. Static crackled through the bridge speakers before resolving into a voice speaking heavily accented Standard Galactic. This is Captain Veltar of the Golden Wing. Please identify yourself and state your intentions. Chun stepped forward toward the communication station. Captain Veltar, this is Lieutenant Commander Marcus Chun of the human vessel Defiance. We're here to get you and your passengers out of this mess. A long pause followed, filled only with static and the distant sound of what might have been Zephyrian voices in the background. When Veltar responded, his voice carried a mixture of relief and disbelief. Commander Chun, a human ship? We had not expected. Another pause, then, more urgently. Commander, you must leave this place immediately. The legends speak of a creature in these asteroids. A thing of nightmares that we know about the Void Stalker, Captain, Chen interrupted. How many souls do you have aboard? And what's your current status? 15 total. 12 cubs between the ages of 5 and 15 standard years, myself, my first officer, and our medical attendant. Our life support systems are failing, and we have multiple hull breaches. The cubs. Commander, they require immediate medical attention. The Crimson Lung Syndrome is advancing faster than we anticipated. Dr. Kithera looked up from her medical sensors, her feathers shifting to a worried shade of deep purple. Marcus, I'm reading elevated toxin levels in their atmosphere. The life support isn't just failing, it's actively poisoning them. We have perhaps 2 hours before the cubs start experiencing respiratory failure. Chen's jaw tightened. The situation was deteriorating by the minute, and they still hadn't seen any sign of the predator that ruled this corner of space. That almost made things worse. The waiting, the knowledge that something deadly was watching them, was nearly as nerve-wracking as direct confrontation would have been. Captain Veltar, we're going to send over a rescue team. Can you prepare your people for emergency transport? Commander, with respect, you cannot dock with us. Our hull integrity is too compromised. Any contact could trigger a complete structural collapse. Chen had already anticipated this problem. The Golden Wing was held together by little more than emergency force fields and prayers. A standard docking procedure would likely cause the entire ship to break apart. We're not going to dock, Chen replied. Stand by for emergency EVA rescue. He turned to his crew, mind already calculating the logistics of the operation. Voss, I want you to prep our 2 shuttlecraft with extended life support and medical facilities. Dr. Kethera, gather all emergency medical supplies you can carry. We're going to need to treat those cubs during transport. Commander, Yaira's crystalline voice carried a note of concern that was unusual for her species. The gravitational stresses in this region make small craft operations extremely hazardous. The shuttles will have minimal maneuvering capability. Then, we'll have to be creative. Rodriguez, I want you monitoring every sensor we have. The moment you detect movement that doesn't belong to an asteroid, you let me know. As the crew began preparing for the rescue operation, Chen pulled up the tactical display and studied the positioning of the asteroids around them. The Golden Wing was trapped between 2 large rocks, each roughly the size of a small city. The space between them was barely large enough for the transport, let alone maneuvering room for rescue craft. They would have to approach from above and below, using the shuttle's emergency transport beams to pull the Zephyrians to safety. Sir, Ensign Rodriguez called out, her voice tight with tension. I'm detecting movement again. Multiple contacts, but they're faint. Could be debris, could be something else. Chen finished. Keep tracking them. I want to know where that thing is at all times. The truth was, Chun suspected that the Void Stalker was already much closer than their sensors could detect. The creature had evolved, or been designed, to hunt in exactly this type of environment. It would use the asteroid field's natural interference to mask its approach, staying in the sensor shadows until the perfect moment to strike. Shuttle Bay reports ready for launch, Commander Voss announced. Good. I'll take Shuttle 1 with Dr. Kethera. Voss, you take Shuttle 2 with Ensign Martinez. We going fast, grab everyone we can, and get out. No heroics, no sightseeing. Chen was heading for the Shuttle Bay when Rodriguez's voice cut across the bridge with sharp urgency. Commander, contact bearing 27 Mark 15, range approximately 800 meters. It's big, and it's moving with purpose. Chen spun around to face the main view screen. For a moment, he saw nothing but the usual chaos of drifting rocks and debris. Then, something shifted in the shadows between 2 massive asteroids, something that was definitely not natural. A section of what he had taken for asteroid surface separated itself from the rock, revealing itself as a living creature of impossible size. The Void Stalker was even more terrifying than the reports had suggested. Its body stretched easily 30 meters from head to tail, covered in natural armor plating that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. 6 powerful limbs ended in claws that could punch through starship armor, while its head featured a mouth filled with teeth designed for rending both metal and flesh. What made the creature truly alien, however, were the bioluminescent patterns that traced along its hide, pulsing with an eerie blue-green light that suggested either some form of communication or perhaps echolocation adapted for space. Mother of God, someone whispered on the bridge. The creature moved through the vacuum with impossible grace, using its claws to grip asteroids and pull itself along like some nightmare version of a space-adapted octopus. Its movements were utterly silent, of course. Sound didn't travel in vacuum. But there was something about the way it moved that suggested intelligence. It wasn't simply a predator. It was a thinking predator. Commander, Veltar's voice crackled through the communication system. Can you see it? The Death Mori has found us. We are all dead. Chen forced himself to remain calm, though his heart was racing. Not yet, we're not. Captain, keep your people calm and ready for transport. We're still getting everyone out. But, Commander, the creature is about to learn why humans have a reputation for being too stupid to know when they're beaten. Chen turned to his crew. Change of plans. We're not taking shuttles. Too vulnerable. We'll use the emergency transport system directly from a ship. Sir, Voss protested, the range is too great. We can't guarantee a clean lock at this distance. Then, we get closer. Commander, Yaira's voice carried a note that was almost panicked by Altarian standards. If we move closer to the transport, we'll be within the creature's attack range. Our shields won't stop those claws. Chen studied the tactical display, his mind racing through possibilities. The Void Stalker was positioning itself between them, and the trapped transport, clearly intending to prevent any rescue attempt. It wasn't simply going to attack immediately. It was going to toy with them, building terror before moving in for the kill. That gave him an idea. A terrible, dangerous, probably suicidal idea, but an idea nonetheless. New plan, he announced. We're going to give our friend exactly what it wants, a target. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of the ship's systems. Chung could see the confusion and concern on his crew's faces, but he also saw the trust. They had served with him for 3 years, through combat situations and diplomatic crises. They knew he didn't make decisions lightly. Rodriguez, I want you to prepare a full-power sensor sweep of the creature. Make it obvious. I want it to know we're scanning it. Sir, that will definitely get its attention. That's the idea. Yaira, plot a course that will take us on a direct intercept with the creature's position. The Altarian's crystalline features actually showed shock. Commander, that is tactically inadvisable. The creature has every advantage in this environment. Exactly, which is why it won't expect us to do it. Chun moved to the tactical station and began inputting commands. Dr. Kithara, I need you to prepare the emergency medical bay for multiple Zephyrin casualties. Voss, charge weapons, but keep them powered down until I give the word. Commander, Voss said carefully, what exactly are you planning? Chen looked at the view screen, where the Void Stalker had begun moving closer to the Golden Wing. The creature was clearly planning to destroy the transport first, eliminating the reason for the rescue attempt, and leaving the human ship without purpose. It was a sound tactical decision, except that it underestimated human stubbornness. I'm planning to do something that creature has probably never encountered before. I'm going to attack it. The silence on the bridge was profound. Chen could almost hear his crew's thoughts as they processed what he had just said. Attack the Void Stalker? The apex predator of known space? The creature that had never been defeated in single combat? Sir, Rodriguez said slowly, our weapons are designed for ship-to-ship combat. The creature's armor can be penetrated. Everything has weak points. We just need to find them. Chun pulled up the tactical analysis of the creature's bioskin data. Look at the joint areas where the armor plates meet. There's exposed tissue there, and the bioluminescent patterns suggest some kind of sensory network. If we can disrupt that, you're talking about getting close enough to target specific body parts on a creature that moves like a spaceborne shark, Voss pointed out. Yes, I am. And while I'm doing that, we're going to transport every person off that dying ship. Chen turned to face his crew fully. This creature has ruled this space because no one has been willing to take the fight to it directly. Everyone who encounters it tries to run, tries to hide, tries to outmaneuver it. But what if we do the opposite? Dr. Kithara's feathers shifted to a pattern that indicated deep thought mixed with admiration. A frontal assault. Aggressive action when the creature expects defensive behavior. Exactly. And humans have one advantage that no other species in the galaxy possesses. What's that? Yaira asked. Chen's smile was grim and determined. We're crazy enough to think that impossible odds just mean we need to try harder. On the view screen, the Void Stalker had reached the outer perimeter of the asteroid cluster containing the Golden Wing. It moved with predatory patience, circling the trapped ship like a cat playing with wounded prey. Soon, it would move in for the kill. But Marcus Chun had other plans. As the Defiance began maneuvering toward the creature's position, Every person on the bridge understood that they were about to attempt something that had never been tried before. They were going to hunt the hunter. The beast was about to discover what happened when it threatened something a human had decided to protect. The Defiance cut through space toward the Void Stalker with the determination of a missile seeking its target. On the bridge, tension crackled like static electricity as Chen's crew prepared for what could very well be the last few minutes of their lives. The creature had noticed their approach and was turning away from the crippled transport to face this unexpected threat. Distance to target, 800 meters, and closing, Yaira reported, her crystalline voice steady despite the madness of their current course of action. Chen studied the tactical display with the focus of a man who had spent years learning to read combat situations. The Void Stalker was positioning itself with the calculated precision of an intelligent predator. It wasn't simply reacting to their approach, it was planning its counterattack. Rodriguez, initiate that sensor sweep. I want a complete biological analysis of our friend. Beginning full spectrum scan now, Commander. The moment the sensor beams touched the creature, its reaction was immediate and violent. The bioluminescent patterns along its hide blazed with angry red light, and it launched itself toward the Defiance with terrifying speed. Its 6 limbs worked in perfect coordination, using asteroids as stepping stones to propel itself through the void like some nightmare version of a space-adapted big cat. Contact in 30 seconds, Voss announced from Tactical. That thing is fast. Faster than our reports indicated. Chun agreed grimly. But speed cuts both ways. Rodriguez, what did the scan tell us? Sir, the creature's armor plating is incredibly dense, but you were right about the joint areas. There are exposed sections of softer tissue at major articulation points. Also, those bioluminescent patterns aren't just for show, they appear to be part of a distributed nervous system. If we could disrupt enough of them, we might be able to confuse its coordination. Good. Voss, target the joint areas with precision plasma bursts. Don't waste power trying to punch through the armor plates. The Void Stalker closed the distance between them with terrifying speed, its massive form blotting out the stars. At this range, Chun could see details that made his blood run cold. The creature's eyes, he counted at least 6 of them, tracked their ship's movement with predatory intelligence. Its claws, each one easily 3 meters long, were scarred from countless battles. This was a creature that had not only survived everything the galaxy could throw at it, but had thrived. Weapons range in 10 seconds, Voss reported. Wait for it, Chun ordered. Let it commit to its attack run. The creature struck with the force of a small asteroid impact. Its claws raked along the Defiance's hull, sending vibrations through the ship's superstructure that Chun could feel in his bones. Sparks flew from damaged systems, and the lights flickered as the ship's power grid struggled to compensate for the damage. Now, Chun shouted. Plasma bolts erupted from the Defiance's weapons arrays, precisely targeted at the exposed tissue areas Rodriguez had identified. The creature's response was immediate, a sound that somehow carried through the ship's hull despite the vacuum of space, a vibration that seemed to come from the creature itself, part roar and part electronic screech. Direct hits on the forward limb joints, Voss reported. The creature is bleeding some kind of luminescent fluid. The Void Stalker recoiled from the ship, its movements now slightly less coordinated. Chun could see that their attacks had damaged its ability to grip asteroids effectively, and the bioluminescent patterns along its damaged limbs were flickering erratically. It's hurt, but not critically, Chun observed. And now it's angry. Yaira, evasive maneuvers. Use the asteroid field. The navigator's response was immediate, sending the Defiance diving between massive rocks with skill that would have impressed any pilot in the galaxy. The ship twisted and turned through the chaotic terrain, using the natural obstacles to break the creature's line of attack. Commander, Dr. Kethera called out from her engineering station. We have significant hull damage on decks 3 and 4. I'm sealing the compromised sections, but if we take another hit like that... Understood. How long do we need for the transport operation? The Corvani's feathers shifted to rapid calculations before settling on a pattern that indicated precision. If we can get within 300 meters of the transport and maintain position for 90 seconds, I can extract all 15 survivors using the emergency beaming system. Chun felt the ship shudder as the creature slammed into another section of their hull. Whatever alien technology or evolution had created the Void Stalker, it had given the beast the ability to navigate three-dimensional space with an agility that defied physics. It moved through the asteroid field like it was swimming through water, using its claws and apparently some form of electromagnetic manipulation to alter its trajectory in ways that should have been impossible. New problem, Rodriguez announced. The creature isn't just attacking us randomly. It's hurting us away from the transport. Every time we try to maneuver closer to the Golden Wing, it positions itself to cut us off. Shin realized with growing admiration and horror that they were dealing with something far more sophisticated than a simple predator. The Void Stalker was demonstrating tactical thinking that rivaled any military commander he had ever served under. It understood their objective and was systematically preventing them from achieving it. Then, we changed the objective, he decided. Yaira, plot a course that takes us directly toward the center of the asteroid field, away from the transport. Sir, the navigator's confusion was evident in her tone. If this thing is as smart as it appears, it will follow us. That gives our friends on the transport a chance to extend their survival time without being under immediate threat. But, Commander, that doesn't solve our fundamental problem. We still need to rescue them. Chen's smile was grim. One crisis at a time, Navigator. First, we deal with our oversized friend here. Then, we worry about the rescue. The Defiance changed course, accelerating deeper into the asteroid field. As Chun had predicted, the Void Stalker immediately pursued them, its attention completely focused on the ship that had dared to wound it. The creature's movements were becoming more erratic as the damage to its nervous system began to affect its coordination, but it was still incredibly dangerous. Tactical, how much damage have we actually done to this thing? Voss consulted his sensors carefully. Based on energy readings and movement analysis, I'd estimate we've reduced its overall combat effectiveness by maybe 15%. We've hurt it, but we're nowhere near stopping it. And our own status? Hull breaches on 3 decks, power output down 12%, and our aft shield generators are operating at 60% capacity. We could take maybe one more direct assault before we start losing critical systems. Shin nodded grimly. The mathematics of the situation were stark. In a sustained battle, the Void Stalker would eventually wear them down and destroy them. They needed to find a way to either escape or inflict massive damage quickly. Rodriguez, those bioluminescent patterns, you said they were part of a distributed nervous system. What would happen if we could overload it? The communications officer thought for a moment. Theoretically, if we could generate a feedback pulse strong enough to disrupt the bioelectropatterns, we might be able to cause a neurological cascade failure. But we need to get close enough to create a direct interface with the creature's nervous system. How close? Direct contact, sir. We'd essentially need to touch it. The bridge fell silent, except for the sound of the ship's systems and the occasional vibration as the Void Stalker's attacks tested their shields. What Rodriguez was suggesting was suicidal. Getting close enough to make physical contact with the creature would put them within range of those massive claws and that mouth full of teeth designed to shred starship hulls. There might be another way. Dr. Kethera spoke up, her feathers displaying the rapid color patterns that indicated intense concentration. If we could modify our shield generators to produce a specific resonance frequency, we might be able to create an interference pattern that would disrupt the creature's nervous system at close range. How close? Chen asked. Perhaps 50 meters. Close enough that the creature could still attack us, but not close enough that we'd need direct physical contact. Chun felt the ship shudder again as the Void Stalker slammed into their starboard shields. They were running out of time and options. Soon, the creature would wear down their defenses enough to reach the hull directly, and when that happened, the fight would be over. Do it, he decided. Modify the shields for neural disruption. How long do you need? 10 minutes to recalibrate the shield generators, assuming I can reroute power from non-essential systems. You've got 5 minutes. As Dr. Kethera began her frantic work, Chen watched the tactical display and tried to think like his opponent. The Void Stalker was intelligent, patient, and methodical. It had presumably survived countless encounters with various species by adapting its tactics to their weaknesses. But had it ever faced an opponent that was willing to sacrifice itself to protect others? Commander, Veltar's voice crackled through the communication system, weak but determined. We are monitoring your battle with the creature. You must not sacrifice yourself for us. The cubs, they would not want others to die on their behalf. Chun keyed the comm system. Captain Veltar, with all due respect, you don't get to decide what we're willing to die for. Stand by for extraction. He turned to his crew. Ladies, gentlemen, and distinguished beings, we are about to attempt something that has never been tried before. We're going to wrestle with a nightmare and win. Any objections? The bridge crew exchanged glances, and Chen saw the same mixture of terror and determination on every face. They knew the odds. They understood the dangers. But they also understood something that many species in the galaxy had never grasped. Sometimes the most important victories required the willingness to pay any price. Dr. Kithara, status on the shield modifications? 3 minutes, Commander. But, Marcus, there's something you should know. This modification will drain our power reserves completely. We will have one chance, perhaps 30 seconds of neural disruption effect, and then our shields will fail entirely. Chun felt his heart rate increase. One chance, 30 seconds, to disable a creature that had ruled this region of space for years. If they failed, they would be defenseless against its retaliation. Then we better make those 30 seconds count. The Void Stalker attacked again, this time managing to get past their forward shields and rake its claws along the ship's primary hull. Atmosphere vented from several new breaches before emergency force fields could seal them. The creature was learning their defensive patterns and adapting its attacks accordingly. Shield modifications complete, Dr. Kethera announced. Neural disruption field ready for activation. Shin took a deep breath and looked at his crew one more time. They were about to bet everything on a theory and 30 seconds of modified shield energy. In the vast darkness of space, 12 Zephyrian cubs waited for rescue, while a creature of living nightmare prepared to destroy anyone foolish enough to try. All stations, prepare for close-range engagement. This is going to get interesting. The modified shield generators hummed with dangerous energy as the Defiance maneuvered for what Chen knew would be their final attack run. The Void Stalker circled them like a shark sensing wounded prey, its bioluminescent patterns pulsing with what almost seemed like anticipation. The creature had weathered their initial assault and learned from it, adapting its tactics with the cold intelligence of a perfect predator. Distance to target, 150 meters, Yaira reported, her crystalline voice betraying the strain of maintaining precise navigation while dodging the creature's increasingly aggressive attacks. Chun gripped his command chair as the ship shuddered from another glancing blow. The Void Stalker's claws had found weak points in their hull plating, and he could hear the distant sound of emergency systems sealing breaches throughout the ship. They were running out of time, structural integrity, and luck. Dr. Kethera, power levels on the neural disruption field? The Corvani's feathers shifted to deep blues and purples as she monitored her engineering displays. Field generators at 93% capacity, but, Commander, the power drain is enormous. Once I activate the disruption field, we'll have perhaps 40 seconds before complete power failure. 40 seconds to disable that thing and get to the transport, Chin muttered. It wasn't nearly enough time, but it was what they had. Voss, are our weapons systems ready for precision targeting? All plasma arrays charged and standing by, sir. I've programmed targeting solutions for every joint area Rodriguez identified, but at close range. Voss hesitated. Commander, If we miss with this attack, that creature will tear us apart before we can recharge. Shin understood the stakes perfectly. They were betting everything on a single coordinated assault that had never been attempted before against a creature that had survived countless battles with some of the most advanced military forces in the galaxy. The margin for error was essentially zero. Rodriguez, any updates from the Golden Wing? Captain Veltar reports life support down to critical levels. The Cubs are showing signs of respiratory distress. Dr. Kethera estimates they have less than an hour before organ failure begins. The weight of 12 young lives pressed down on Chin's shoulders like a physical burden. Every second they spent fighting the Void Stalker brought those children closer to death. But there was no way to rescue them while the creature remained active. It was a cruel equation with only one possible solution. Range 75 meters, Yaira announced. The creature seemed to sense their approach differently this time. Instead of attacking immediately, it hung motionless in space, its 6 eyes fixed on their ship with predatory intelligence. The bioluminescent patterns along its hide had shifted to deep reds and purples, colors that somehow conveyed menace even across species barriers. It knows something's different, Chin observed. That thing has been studying our attack patterns. It's expecting us to try something new. Should we abort? Voss asked. Chun considered it for a moment, then shook his head. No, if it's expecting us to be clever, then we'll be stupid instead. Full power approach, maximum acceleration directly at the target. No evasi maneuvers, no tactical finesse. Just a straight ram. The bridge fell silent as his crew processed what he had just ordered. A direct approach against the Void Stalker was tactically insane. The creature would have multiple opportunities to attack them during their approach, and their ship wasn't built for ramming attacks against armored biological targets. Sir, Yaira said carefully, that approach will put us well within the creature's attack range for an extended period. It could destroy us before we reach optimal neural disruption distance. That's what I'm counting on, Chin replied. This thing has been playing with us, studying our tactics, waiting for us to make a mistake. But what if we don't make a mistake? What if we do exactly what any sane ship captain would never do? Dr. Kithura's feathers shifted to a pattern Shun had never seen before, rapid flashes of gold and silver that seemed to indicate a mixture of admiration and terror. You want to surprise it by doing something completely irrational. Humans have a saying, if you can't dazzle them with brilliance, baffle them with bullshit. This creature expects us to be tactically sound, strategically logical. So we're going to be neither. The Void Stalker began moving toward them as the Defiance accelerated on its collision course. The creature's movements were fluid and confident, clearly anticipating another opportunity to rake its claws along their hull and weaken their defenses further. 50 meters and closing, Yaira reported. Neural disruption field activated, Dr. Kethera announced. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The modified shield energy created a visible distortion in space around the ship, and the moment it touched the Void Stalker, the creature's coordinated movements became erratic spasms. Its bioluminescent patterns flashed chaotically, cycling through colors at random as its distributed nervous system struggled to cope with the interference. It's working, Rodriguez shouted. The creature's bioelectric patterns are destabilizing. The Void Stalker thrashed in space like a massive fish caught in an electromagnetic net. Its claws swung wildly, no longer guided by intelligence, but by neural misfires and confused reflexes. For the first time since they had entered the asteroid field, Chun felt a surge of genuine hope. Voss, target the primary nerve clusters along its spine. Maximum power, continuous fire. Plasma bolts erupted from every weapon array on the ship, precisely targeted at the points where the creature's bioluminescent patterns converged. Each impact sent waves of disruption along the beast's hide, and its thrashing became more violent as its nervous system suffered cascading failures. Direct hits across all target zones, Voss reported with satisfaction. The creature's coordination is breaking down completely. But victory came with a price. The power drain from a neural disruption field was enormous, and Chun could see their energy reserves dropping toward critical levels. Warning lights began flashing across the bridge as non-essential systems shut down to maintain the field. Power reserves at 30% and falling, Dr. Kethera announced, her voice tight with concern. Field collapse in 20 seconds. Chun watched the Void Stalker's death throes with grim determination. The creature was clearly dying. Its movements had become increasingly feeble, and large sections of its bioluminescent patterns had gone dark permanently. But 20 seconds wasn't enough time to finish it off and reach the transport. Reduce power to life support and artificial gravity, Chun ordered. Give me every erg of energy you can find. Commander, that's extremely dangerous. If we lose life support, we won't need life support if that thing recovers enough to tear us apart. Do it. As the ship's environmental systems shut down to feed power into the neural disruption field, Chin felt the artificial gravity fade to nothing. His crew grabbed onto their stations as they began floating in the zero-gravity environment, but their focus never wavered from their instruments. Field holding at reduced intensity, Dr. Kethera reported. But we're down to emergency power reserves. Field collapse in 40 seconds. The Void Stalker's movements were now barely more than occasional twitches. Its eyes, those 6 predatory orbs that had tracked their ship with such intelligence, were dim and unfocused. The creature that had ruled this region of space for years was finally defeated. Weapons, finish it, Chun ordered. The final plasma barrage struck the creature's head and primary nerve center with surgical precision. The last of its bioluminescent patterns flickered once and went dark forever. The Void Stalker hung motionless in space, its massive form drifting slowly among the asteroids it had once used as hunting grounds. Target neutralized, Voss announced with quiet satisfaction. The creature is dead. A cheer went up from the bridge crew, but Chun cut it short with a sharp gesture. Save the celebration for later. We still have 12 cubs to rescue and about 30 seconds of power left. Dr. Kethera was already working to restore their ship's systems, bringing life support and artificial gravity back online. Emergency power will last another 10 minutes if we're careful. That's cutting it close, but it'll have to do. Yaira, plot a direct course to the transport. Maximum safe speed. As the Defiance limped toward the crippled Golden Wing, Chin allowed himself a moment to look back at the Void Stalker's corpse. The creature had been a magnificent predator, perfectly adapted to its environment, and possessed of intelligence that rivaled any sentient species. In another context, he might have felt regret about destroying something so remarkable. But as Rodriguez re-established communication with the transport, and he heard the weak voices of Zephyrian cubs calling for their parents, any regret vanished. The creature had chosen to threaten innocence, and that made its fate inevitable. Captain Veltar, this is Commander Chun. The threat has been neutralized. Prepare your people for immediate transport. Commander, you killed it? You actually killed the Death Mori? We had a disagreement about who those children belonged to, Chun replied grimly. We won. As the rescue operation began in earnest, Chin couldn't help but think about the larger implications of what they had accomplished. The Void Stalker had been considered invincible, a force of nature that could not be defeated. But they had proven that even the most dangerous predator had weaknesses, and that sometimes the best defense was an offense so aggressive that it defied conventional wisdom. The cubs would live. The nightmare that had haunted this region of space was ended. And somewhere in the galaxy, other predators who had counted on fear and intimidation to protect them might want to reconsider their assumptions about what humans would and would not do to protect the innocent. The beast was dead. Now came the harder part, living with the consequences of proving that even monsters could be killed if someone was willing to pay the price. 3 hours later, the Defiance limped through the outer perimeter of the Kepler Station traffic control zone, her hull scarred with deep gouges and emergency patches gleaming silver against the darker metal. In the ship's medical bay, 12 Zephyrian cubs breathed easily for the first time in days, their small forms curled up in specially modified life support pods, while Dr. Kethera monitored their recovery from crimson lung syndrome. Chin stood in the medical bay's observation window, watching the youngest of the cubs, a tiny female no more than 5 years old, sleep peacefully while automated medical systems gradually purged the toxins from her respiratory system. Captain Veltar stood beside him, the tall Zephyrian's usual composure cracked by exhaustion and relief. "Commander," Veltar said quietly, "my people have legends about warriors who face impossible odds to protect the innocent. We call them Velthara, those who stand between the darkness and the light. I never believed such beings truly existed until today." Chun felt uncomfortable with the praise. "Captain, I just did what anyone would do in the same situation." "No," Veltar replied firmly. "Most beings would have calculated the odds and turn away." The Galactic Council classified this region as a total loss precisely because no rational military commander would risk ships and crew for what they considered acceptable casualties. The Zephyrian was right, though Chin didn't like to think about it in those terms. The cold mathematics of war and rescue operations often demanded that difficult choices be made about who could be saved and who would be sacrificed. But there's something about those 12 young voices calling for help that had made the mathematics irrelevant. "How long until the cubs can be transferred to the medical station?" Chin asked. "Dr. Kethera looked up from her medical display, her feathers now showing the deep green patterns that indicated professional satisfaction. "The toxin purge will be complete within the hour. All 12 cubs should make full recoveries, though they'll need several weeks of specialized treatment to repair the lung damage." Chun nodded, feeling a weight he hadn't realized he was carrying lift from his shoulders. They had done it, against impossible odds. Facing a creature that had never been defeated, they had managed to save every life that had been threatened. "Commander," Rodriguez called from the bridge communication system, "we're receiving a priority message from Kepler Station. Admiral Harrison wants to speak with you immediately." Chun sighed. Admiral Harrison was the sector commander, a by-the-book officer who had made it clear that he considered human crews to be loose cannons who required constant supervision. The fact that Chun had violated a council exclusion zone and engaged in combat operations without authorization was going to require some explaining. "Put him through to my ready room. I'll be right there." As Chun made his way to his small office adjacent to the bridge, he mentally prepared for what would likely be a difficult conversation. The Admiral had never approved of Chin's tendency to interpret orders creatively, and this latest incident was going to provide plenty of ammunition for criticism. The Ready Room's communication screen activated to show Admiral Harrison's weathered face, his expression grim but unreadable. Behind him, Chun could see the command center of Kepler Station, busy with the normal traffic of a major military facility. "Commander Chun," Harrison began, "I've been receiving some very interesting reports about your activities in the Tango 77 sector." "Sir, I can explain." Harrison held up a hand to cut him off. "Before you say anything, Commander, let me tell you what I know. You violated a council exclusion zone, engaged in unauthorized combat operations against a classified biological threat, and caused what our sensors indicate was a significant disruption in the asteroid field. Is that an accurate summary?" Chun felt his heart sink. "Yes, sir. But there were extenuating circumstances, 12 Zephyrian cubs who were dying from crimson lung syndrome while trapped in a failing transport ship. You know about that?" Harrison's stern expression cracked slightly, revealing what might have been approval. "Commander, the Zephyrian government has been in contact with us for the last hour. It seems that Captain Veltar transmitted a full report of your rescue operation, including details about your engagement with the Void Stalker." Chin waited for the other shoe to drop. There was no way this conversation was going to end well. "Tell me, Commander, did you actually kill that thing?" The question caught Chin off guard. "Sir, the Void Stalker, the creature that has been terrorizing this sector for the past 2 years. Did you actually manage to destroy it?" "Yes, sir. We modified our shield generators to create a neural disruption field that interfered with the creature's distributed nervous system. combined with precision weapons fire at vulnerable joint areas. We were able to cause a cascading neurological failure that resulted in the creature's death. Harrison leaned back in his chair, shaking his head slowly. Do you have any idea what you've accomplished, Commander? Sir, that creature has been responsible for the loss of over 40 ships and more than 800 lives. The Council has spent millions of credits developing weapons specifically designed to deal with it, all without success. 3 different military task forces have tried to eliminate the threat, and all 3 suffered significant casualties without even damaging the thing. Chun felt a growing sense of unease. Admiral, I want to emphasize that we didn't set out to hunt the creature. Our primary objective was always the rescue of the cubs. The combat engagement was purely defensive. I understand that, Commander, which makes what you accomplished even more remarkable. Harrison's expression became more serious. The Council has been debating whether to declare that entire sector a permanent exclusion zone. Your actions have opened up one of the most resource-rich regions in our space to safe navigation and development. The conversation was taking a turn Chun hadn't expected. He had been prepared for disciplinary action, possibly even a court-martial. Instead, it sounded like Harrison was congratulating him. Sir, does this mean we're not facing charges for violating the exclusion zone? Harrison actually smiled. Commander, the Zephyrian government has formally requested that you and your crew be awarded their highest civilian honor for valor in the protection of their citizens. The Council is considering upgrading your mission status from exploration to special operations, which would give you broader authority to respond to emergency situations. Chun sat down heavily in his chair. The implications of what Harrison was saying were staggering. Special operations status would essentially give him the authority to operate independently, responding to crises without waiting for authorization from higher command. It was the kind of operational freedom that most ship commanders only dreamed of. There is one condition, Harrison continued. The Council wants a detailed technical report on how you modified your shield generators to create the neural disruption field. If this technique can be replicated, it could revolutionize how we deal with biological threats throughout the galaxy. Dr. Kethera has already begun compiling the technical specifications. We'll have a complete report ready within 48 hours. Excellent. There's one more thing, Commander. We've been monitoring communications throughout the sector since news of your victory began spreading. It seems that several other regions with similar biological threats are requesting assistance from human crews specifically. Chun raised an eyebrow. Sir, apparently, word is spreading that humans have a particular talent for dealing with creatures that other species consider impossible to defeat. The Council is fielding requests for human-led task forces to address problems that have been considered unsolvable. The irony wasn't lost on Chun. For years, humans had struggled to prove themselves worthy of inclusion in the galactic community. They had been seen as primitive, violent, and unpredictable. Now, those same characteristics that had made them suspect were being recognized as valuable assets. Admiral, what's our next assignment? Harrison consulted his command display. There's a situation developing in the Rigel sector. Something called a phase spider has been attacking mining operations. The creature appears to exist partially outside normal space-time, making it impossible to target with conventional weapons. The local government has specifically requested a human crew to investigate. Chun felt a familiar stirring of excitement mixed with apprehension. Another impossible creature, another rescue mission, another chance to prove that sometimes the best solution to an unsolvable problem was someone too stubborn to accept that it couldn't be solved. When do we ship out? As soon as the Defiance is repaired and your medical bay is cleared. Figure 72 hours. As the communication ended, Chun leaned back in his chair and thought about the path that had brought him to this moment. 3 years ago, he had been a by-the-book naval officer with a standard career trajectory. Now, he was apparently becoming the galaxy's go-to solution for impossible monsters and hopeless rescue missions. He thought about the 12 cubs sleeping peacefully in his medical bay, alive, because someone had been willing to face a nightmare to protect them. He thought about the Void Stalker's corpse drifting among the asteroids, no longer a threat to anyone. He thought about the phase spider in the Rigel sector, and whatever other horrors might be lurking in the dark corners of space. In the observation lounge, Captain Veltar was telling his cubs stories about brave warriors who faced impossible odds to protect the innocent. The cubs listened with wide eyes, their small voices asking questions about heroes and monsters and the thin line that separated civilization from chaos. Chun smiled and headed back to the bridge. There was work to do, reports to file, and repairs to oversee. In 72 hours, they would be heading toward another creature that everyone else had given up trying to defeat. He was already looking forward to it. The galaxy was full of monsters that thought themselves invincible, creatures that had grown complacent in their dominance. They were about to learn what humans had always known, that the most dangerous predator was one that fought not for itself, but for something worth protecting. The cubs were safe. The beast was dead, and somewhere in the darkness between the stars, other nightmares were about to discover that they were no longer the apex predators they thought themselves to be. The age of human stubbornness in the face of impossible odds had officially begun.